All right, let's dive right in. If you've ever thought that being a designer is just about making things look pretty on a screen, well, I'm here to tell you that's barely scratching the surface. Today, we're going to get into what it really means to think like a designer. And spoiler alert, it has a lot more to do with understanding people than it does with understanding pixels. First things first, let's get one major misconception out of the way. User experience, or UX, is not about the software you use. Figma, Sketch, Adobe, they're amazing tools, for sure, but they're just the instruments. They are not the music. A truly great designer could figure things out with a napkin and a pen if they really, truly understood the core of what UX is all about. Because this is the music. It's all psychology. It's about getting to grips with the messy, wonderful, and yeah, often totally illogical ways our brains are wired. If you want to build products that people actually love and use, you have to become a student of human nature first. Which brings us perfectly to our first big idea. To design for other human beings, we have to accept a fundamental and kind of humbling truth. We are not the perfectly rational creatures we like to imagine we are. Nope, we're something way more interesting than that. Think about it. We don't sit down and make a spreadsheet with pros and cons for every little choice we make. Of course not. Our brains are hardwired to be efficient, to save energy. So we lean on emotions, gut feelings, habits, and all these little mental shortcuts to get through the day. And that's what makes us predictably irrational. And the technical term for these shortcuts? It's heuristics. You use them all the time. Why do you buy a certain brand of coffee? Is it really the best one out there? Or is it just familiar? That feeling of familiarity, that's a heuristic. It's your brain taking a shortcut. And if we ignore these patterns as designers, we're basically designing for a robot, not a real person. Okay, so understanding that other people can be irrational, that's the easy part. The really, really hard part is recognizing the single biggest obstacle standing in your way as a designer: your own mind. Come on, be honest. Have you ever designed something or even just used an app and thought to yourself, this is so obvious, why doesn't everyone just get it? That feeling right there? That's the trap. It's a massive blind spot that every single one of us has. And this trap has a name. It's called cognitive bias. For designers, probably the most dangerous one of all is something called projection bias. It's that sneaky, unconscious belief that the people we're designing for have the same knowledge, the same motivations, and the same way of seeing the world that we do. But they don't, not even close. So this is the one thing I really want you to remember from this whole explainer. Let this sink in. You have to learn to separate yourself from the user. Your personal preferences are just that, personal. They are not data. They're not truth. To really think like a designer, you have to master the art of stepping outside of your own head. Let me tell you a quick story about how I learned this lesson the hard way. It's a moment that completely rewired my brain and how I see design, and it has absolutely nothing to do with screens or software. So back when I was an architecture student, I was looking at these blueprints for a public building, and I see this long, winding ramp right next to a perfectly good staircase. And my first immediate thought was, what a total waste of space. Stairs are so much more efficient. A few months later, I was out doing some field research, and I watched as a person in a wheelchair came up to an entrance that only had a single step. Just one. And they were stuck. That moment, I'm telling you, it hit me like a ton of bricks. My whole perspective, my entire reality just shattered right there. And in that instant, I finally understood. That ramp I had dismissed as just wasted concrete, it wasn't concrete at all. For that person and for so many others, a parent with a stroller, an elderly person, that ramp was everything. It was freedom, it was dignity, it was independence. And that was the moment I started to actually think like a designer. That realization, that's the heart of empathy. But empathy isn't just some warm, fuzzy feeling. It's a powerful tool. So how do we actually use it? How do we take that kind of aha moment and turn it into a real process for designing things for everyone? Well, there are three main frameworks that can help us do just that. Okay, let's break these down. First up, you've got universal design. The goal here is pretty straightforward. Create one single solution that works for the absolute widest range of people possible. Think of automatic doors. Now, this is great, but the challenge is that sometimes a one-size-fits-all solution ends up being kind of meh for everyone. Then there's inclusive design. Here, the strategy is different. You solve a problem for one specific group, knowing that the solution will probably benefit tons of other people. A perfect example is closed captions. They were designed for the deaf and hard of hearing, but now, who uses them? Everybody. And so finally, we have equity-focused design. This one is really proactive. It's about intentionally seeking out and lifting up groups that have been historically ignored or even harmed by technology, like making sure voice assistants can actually understand a wide range of accents. It's about giving everyone what they need to succeed. You know that idea from inclusive design, solving for one and extending to many? It's so powerful, it actually has its own name. It's one of those things that once you see it, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere. It's called the curb cut effect. The principle is simple but profound. When you design for the people on the margins, for those with the most specific needs, you often end up creating a way better experience for everybody else in the middle. And the classic example, of course, is the curb cut itself. You know, those little ramps on the corners of sidewalks? They were originally created just for wheelchair users. But then who started using them? Parents pushing strollers, delivery workers with carts, travelers with rolling luggage, kids on skateboards. Now, literally everyone benefits. It's a perfect example of designing for the few and improving life for the many. Now, let's take this thinking and apply it on a massive global scale. The future of the internet is being shaped by a group people call the next billion users. These are folks coming online for the very first time, and their reality is often completely different from someone in, say, Silicon Valley. They might be using cheaper, less powerful phones, on data plans where every megabyte counts. We can't ask them to adapt to our technology has to adapt to them. Okay, so we've covered psychology, empathy, real-world examples. So what's next? How do you actually start doing this? How do you put all these ideas into practice? Let's walk through the basic game plan. This right here is the classic user-centered design process. The most important thing to see is that it's not a straight line, it's a loop. It's a cycle. You start by getting out there and understanding real users in their actual world. You don't guess, you observe. From there, you figure out what they actually need, not what you think they need. Only then do you start designing possible solutions. But, and this is critical, you don't stop there. You have to test your ideas with those same real users, see where they stumble, listen to their feedback, and then you go back, you make it better, and you start the loop all over again. So here's your homework, your first UX workout. I want you to pick something totally mundane, something you use every day without thinking. An ATM, the app for your bus, even the cap on a medicine bottle. And just spend 10 minutes really observing it like a designer. Ask yourself these questions. Who is this really for? Who is being left out? What assumptions did the person who made this have? Just doing this simple exercise will start to build that design muscle. Because at the end of the day, that's the real takeaway here. Thinking like a designer isn't a job title. It's a completely new way of seeing the world around you. It's about shifting your mindset from judgment to curiosity. So, my final question for you is this. After everything we've talked about, what are you going to notice differently today?